In this video, I'm going to upgrade this compressor. Now I know it's not a white one, but I will get back to the car eventually. I'm Steve and welcome to my channel. So the plan is to mount those two motors on top of these two motors. Now I've got 3 lengths of this angle and it's much more than I need, and it's just the right width so that I can bolt a frame along here, up and along, and the same this side, to mount those two motors. Now I tried to buy just the motors on their own because that's all I need, but I couldn't. The only place I could find was in Germany, and the import costs would have been too much. So I found these two compressors, and I think they are returns to the supplier, and it's called A grade returns, and they worked out at £120 each. So I thought that was quite good because all I need is the motor, so the motor's going to be all right. And actually there is no damage. One of the glasses on the gauges is cracked, and that's all that's wrong with it. So then what I can do, once I've got this up and running, I can put all the parts left over on eBay and reclaim some of the cost of it. That's the plan. Right, that's all the metal cut, 10 by 19. Now I have to decide how to join it together. I don't want it more than 10, I don't want it more than 19. So there's several ways to do this. The obvious way would be to put a 45-degree angle on each end and then just put them together. But I've tried this in the past many times, and it's difficult to actually get exactly 45 degrees. So what I do, I notch it. So I will cut out a square here, and then the end of there will butt up to there, like that. And this will be level here. And I find it's easier to get exactly 90 degrees. And I'm overlapping this, so then that gives me some leeway to file it dead 90 degrees. So it's about half a mil or mil that way, about half a mil that way, and I can mark it. And I can use the end of this square Okay, that's all been filed back now, nice and square, and I've radiused this so I know it's not catching in the corner here at all. And when that goes on there, there's about half a mil step, and that'll be handy for when I'm welding. It kind of, the weld will go in there. Right, so that's all 8 joints done. Now, can anyone see the mistake that I made? Comment if you see it. So I'm all ready to weld now. Just before I weld, I'm going to chamfer everywhere where the weld's going to go. So if I end up grinding the weld flat, I know there's still some weld there holding it together. So I've taken all the paint off where there's going to be a weld. I've filled the holes because I didn't want it. It looked a bit odd with odd holes in it. Now I've just managed to clamp it on here, and I'm going to tack each corner. So each corner is exactly 90 degrees, and it measures 10 inches to the middle of that there, and the same this side. And to double check, it's actually just over 21 3/4, and that is 21 3/4. So that's ready to tack. So that's the two frames done. So my next task is to drill the holes to mount it and mount the motors on here. And also I've got to mount the capacitors for the motors. And the metal cover is wider than this, so I may have to weld a bit of metal on here or on the side. It depends which is the most convenient location to do that. Right, now I need to disconnect the motors before I take them off. Now, this may look complicated, but it's not. It's very simple. So the input comes in this side. So the live and the neutral come in here. And when the pressure goes down, it actuates a switch in here, which turns the motors on. Now all these wires are for the motor and for the pressure relief valve. So that is the pressure relief valve. I'll go into that in a bit more detail later. But so the wires you've got here, the two brown ones are for the motor live, the two blue ones or for the motor neutral. Now the red one is for the pressure release valve, and the black one is for the pressure release valve. So it's quite simple. Obviously the earth goes round here. So it's quite simple really. I wasn't quite right what I said before. This is the actual valve, and this part is just the actuator. So inside there's electromagnet. So when the power is on and the motors are running, this is energized and it closes this valve, and inside here there's a magnet, so that when this is energized, it attracts a magnet and it closes this valve. So then the air is coming in here, this is closed, and there's a one-way valve in here which opens, allows the air into the tank. Now as soon as the pressure gets to the correct pressure and it turns off, this valve closes because there's no more air going in, and this de-energizes and it actually opens this valve and it exhausts through this hole in the top here. And so the reason that is there is so that the next time it turns on, there is no pressure on top of the pistons stopping the motor from turning round. Most compressors have this in one way or the other, but on these it's slightly different because they've got this one actually on top of the tank. Usually they have them in here, have them in that unit. They have a pressure release and you can hear the air being released in there. So as I took these off, one thing occurred to me, that obviously I'm going to have double the amount of wires coming into here, and it's not going to fit. So I'm going to have some sort of a junction box. I'll have to think about that one. In fact, these wires are too big for this fitting. The actual black should be coming out of here, so it clamps on the black. So I've kept the wires on here so I can put them back the same way, but I don't think it matters. It's just a capacitor, rather large capacitor. I don't know what this 20 is, that farads. Don't know if that is 20. It's got to be more than 20, I would have thought. And it's 450 volts AC, so I don't really know what all that means. If anyone knows the capacity of this, put a comment below, because I'm no electrician. I don't know what it means. So you may be thinking that when this is screwed on, it stops the air coming out, but there's not. There's like a tiny, you can't see it, but there's a tiny slot in the bottom of that thread there, and there's holes in the side, so it comes out of there. And there's the actual one-way valve, so this screws into the tank. So there's a spring in there holding that valve closed. Right, I've clamped the two frames on 7.5 inches apart from there to there, because that's the same as the mounting feet on the motors. The problem was, before I put the motors on, these were both leaning inwards, and it doesn't really matter when you've got the motor at the bottom. It doesn't really matter because the rubber takes any difference up, but up that length it meant it was an inch too short here. So all I've done, just to try it, I put that steel rule across to keep it 7.5 inches apart. Right, that's the last foot done up. So all the rubber feet are tightened, and all the bolts under here are tight. And this is not the final position of these motors. I've just put them on here to try it. And yeah, it does wobble. It does wobble a little bit. The angle overlaps the head just by a little bit, but it's not touching the head. So when I run it, if it does touch the head, I will think about putting a cross brace here and try to somehow stop it doing this business. So